Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Words, a novel idea. I am your sound and audio engineer, Logan. Today, we are joined by our host, Colleen, our co host, Paul, and today we are talking to Paul about character development. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe. How are we all doing today?
Good.
Thank you.
How's it going, Logan?
Good.
Good. Logan just had a birthday, so happy birthday, Logan.
And Logan's sister had a birthday,
Yes.
strangely enough, on the same day.
Yes, I have two children that were born on the same day at the same time, 5 years apart.
5 years apart. As strange as that may sound, it runs in
Runs in the family.
in the family because my wife, Colleen's mother, her father and his brother were born on the same day, 13 years apart.
Well, I guess if we're consistent in anything, it's
I
that.
guess. I don't know. I don't know what it says about us, but
Well, I could just say
I don't
too
know.
much tequila on my part.
yeah,
Oh.
since I'm an only child, I can't speak to it one
That's
way or
right.
the other.
So today we're going to talk about character development.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about character development in film, books, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because character development, in either one, you've got to start off with a good character. I mean, first you got to have a story, and think about your story when you think, oh, I've got a good idea for a book, or I've got a good idea for a movie. Do you have a book, a movie, or a scene? Is it something that happened that will not carry itself all the way through the book or all the way through the screenplay? So you've got to have this. You've got to have a lot more than just one little scene to start working. You can build from that, but you've got to have a story to build from.
Yeah, but how does that relate to character
Well,
development?
once you have a story, then you got to put characters in it. The three elements of writing for screenplays or for novels are characters, action, and dialogue. If you don't have those three, you've got a very boring book, or you've got a screenplay with a talking head that's 40 feet tall. So let's talk about characters. When you think about a character, you're probably going to use a lot of yourself, and you're going to use people that you know and people that you've heard about and read about, and you can't escape that. It's inevitable that you're going to use bits and pieces of yourself, your friends and family, in everything that you do.
Isn't there a saying, don't be friends with a writer because eventually you'll be called off in one of their
Oh,
books?
absolutely. I tell my friends, for $50, I'll put you in my book. For $100, I won't.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much money I get. But in developing your character, think about your character. Who is this person? And in some instances, the character can be the setting, it can be the story, but think about it as a person. And a lot of people will do a background data sheet. How old is this person? How tall is this person? What color hair does this person have? What do they drive? Do they smoke? Is it recreational smoking, or is it something you can buy at the 7-Eleven? I guess depending on which 7-Eleven you go
I was going to say,
to.
you could probably pick up some street pharmaceuticals at the 7-Eleven.
That may not be a good analogy, but you get the point. But everything that you want for that character, first, I suggest you get a little notebook.
Yeah.
And on the first page, put Johnny Jones, character. How old is Johnny? How tall is Johnny? What color hair does Johnny have? Put all the things that you want Johnny to have that you know right away, put them in that notebook so that when you get to page 212 and you talk about Johnny being bald, and on your notebook you had Johnny with long brown hair, it's not going to work. You've got to be consistent. You got to be consistent.
Yeah, I find that the notebook just, and it's weird to, you think, well, I can remember who this character is and what they look like.
You can't.
And you're 45 pages in,
Yeah.
and like you said, they're completely different.
Yeah. And when you're writing, again, going back to, Johnny has long brown hair, and 200 pages later he's bald. you're not going to be able to sit down with your editor and say, oh, wait, remember back on page 57, he went to the barbershop and had his head shaved. Well, unless you say that,
Right.
Specifically, it's not going to track.
Right. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, write what we see, and it doesn't always translate to written word because it's more like watching a movie.
Yeah.
You know.
And your character, and we'll get into this later with when we talk about dialogue and action. But your character has to be true to the setting, the scene, and the times. If you're writing a book or story about the frontier in 1850, he's not going to be driving a Ford F-100 pickup truck.
Right.
He can be riding a horse. He's going to be using slang and dialogue that is indicative of the times and the places that where he is. So you've got to be conscious of that. His clothes. One of the things that I have a novel series set in Atlanta in the early 1950s. And I went on eBay and found a map of the city of Atlanta dated 1950.
Okay. So
And I've got all the city streets. I know exactly how he gets from point A to point B, where he has to turn left on Lucky Street and right on Peachtree. I've got all the streets down. At one point, I needed my character to have a new suit of clothes. Thought, okay, how much does a suit cost in 1953? I had no idea. So I went on eBay and I found a 1953 Sears Roebuck catalog. And a suit of clothes from 1953 in Sears Roebuck with an extra pair of pants. You got 2 pair of pants. Was $27.
if only.
Yeah, if only. I had no idea how much it cost. But if somebody knows these things, you don't want to put in there that he spent $300 for a suit. And in 1953, think, my God, is it made out of spun gold?
Yeah.
So be true to the times with your character.
Because that's going to develop your character as well, the settings.
Oh
and
yeah,
locations.
absolutely.
Help develop.
And again, be true to the times. If again, going back to my character, he's a private investigator who works out of a pool room. Well, in 1953, pool rooms were places that ladies didn't go.
Right.
Pool rooms were roughhouse places. They were not billiard parlors. It was not a sports bar with a pool table where you put 5 quarters in it and got a rack of balls. This is where you had usually a black kid who was the rack boy and combination rack boy and janitor. And when you got through shooting the game of pool, you'd slam the big end of your pool cue on the floor and yell rack, and he would come and rack up the balls, and you'd toss him a dime or 15 cents or whatever the game costs, and maybe a nickel tip for him, and you start shooting again.
And that's indicative to that time period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, you have to be true to the dialogue at that time. I mentioned in a recent book about this character in this time that I use a term, a colored man. And my editor came back and said, no, it's a man of color. And I said, no, that's not what you would call, what we would refer to now as an African American. In 1953, it was a colored man.
Right.
If you said a man of color, somebody would say, well, what color is he?
Yeah.
Because it was a term that was not used. And so you might not use that in your daily vocabulary, but
if you're going to write historically accurate, then they have to speak the way they would.
Exactly. So you've got to do that. And when I'm developing a character, the 2 things that I like to do with my character is I like to know their secret, and I like to know what they're afraid of. And when I say afraid, I'm not talking about spiders and snakes and bugs and stuff like that. I'm talking about what wakes your character up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat from a deep sleep. For my character, he was a World War II veteran, and sometimes his secret is that he's afraid of some of the things that he did in World War II,
Right.
and I tie his secret into his fear, because the love of his life now is a lady of Italian heritage. Her mother and father immigrated to the United States just before World War II broke out.
So you have your character can carry some weight or some anguish, and that makes them more relatable to people.
Exactly,
reading.
and because I had him serving in the Italian theater of war, his fear is that he may have come into contact and perhaps killed one of his girlfriend's relatives.
Right.
And so he doesn't talk about the war too much, simply for that reason. He talks about being in North Africa and being in other parts of Europe, but not the service that he did in Italy.
So now you've got this character and you're putting them through the motions of existing, on your page. Where do you go from there?
Well, now you've got to weave him into the story. What's the story all about?
Right.
You've got the character. You've got a story idea. The first book in this series was called The Wrath of the Dixie Mafia, which is on the shelf behind me. I think you can see it. And it's about, my guy's name is Johnny Morocco. And another secret that Johnny has is, after he left the war, he wanted to leave everything behind, to include his name. His name is really Johnny McDonald.
Yeah.
So he was from West Palm Beach, Florida, which is where I grew up. So I know some of the area that he grew up in. And so he left West Palm Beach and comes to Atlanta, and he changes his name. He's changed his whole identity. He goes from being Johnny McDonald to Johnny Morocco.
So we've talked about your character. How did you develop this character? How did this character? I mean, I know you've talked about that you would heard the name and everything, and
Yeah.
Once you figured out Johnny, how did you develop him further?
Once you get in the groove with your characters take over, and they pretty much tell you who they are and what they need. Johnny needed a car, and I gave him a 1948 Ford. This is the 1953. It's a 5-year-old car, something he could afford. I had an uncle who had a 1948 Ford.
So you're pulling a lot from your life, what you lived.
Oh yeah, and every writer's going to do that. You're going to, unless you're writing about something that happened on the moon and you've never been there.
Yeah, but what about fantasy writers? I mean, they have to develop their characters too.
They do, but they develop them within the world that
they build.
They build. I would never attempt to write fantasy because I don't read it. I don't understand that world, and I have enough problems keeping up with the characters in my 1953 world. I've got a 1953 series. I've got a contemporary series. I've got a Vietnam series. I've got some standalone books, and I'm about to start another series based on a female detective in Florida. So I've got, people say, I'd like to get inside your head. There's no room in my head.
Yeah.
It's so crowded now. I got a no vacancy sign flashing across my forehead.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. And once you, the folks out there who are watching this and listening to it, once people find out that you claim to be a writer, so I'm a writer. I say, oh, I've got a great idea for you, or they'll want to pick your brain,
Right.
and that's always a term that people use all the time. I like to pick your brain about my story.
Right.
Don't pick my brain. You don't want to see what's in
Somebody
there.
must be in there.
You'd be embarrassed to see what's in there. But your character, once you set your character, when I set my character in Atlanta in 1953, he's in a pool room. I hung out in a pool room in Atlanta in the 1950s. I know the characters that were in there. I know what kind of seats and chairs and pool tables and everything that was in there. I know what they served. They had a little lunch counter, and the biggest thing they served was chili dogs, and they had chili dogs that would absolutely set you on fire. And so my character has a chili dog every day or so. So your character will define a lot of your setting and your dialogue.
Right.
You know, you put your character in a situation and you sit back and think, well, now, what would my character say in 1953 when he had breakfast with a police officer? Does he like that police officer? Does he not like him? Are they friends? Are they friendly adversaries?
Right.
You know,
I think I helped you edit Where There's Smoke about your female smoke jumper.
Yeah.
And you had her as contemporary, but you had her with a Walkman.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you beat me up about that.
It's just a little, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you said it's contemporary. I'm like
Yeah.
contemporary for 1980.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So.
And so, you know, and thank God for editors, because you can't find your own mistakes.
Right.
It's impossible to find your own mistakes. And I realized the other day that in the Vietnam story I was writing, after I'm a retired Army, and after Vietnam, in the Army we wore what we call khakis, and it was just a shirt and pants, you know, shirt tucked in and buttoned up. And if you smoked, you would just stick your cigarettes inside your shirt, you know, and they would just hang inside the shirt. So I've got a guy in Vietnam who smokes a pipe, and he sticks his pipe and his tobacco inside his shirt. Well, he would be wearing jungle fatigues at the time, and the shirts were loose, and everything would have fallen out.
Yeah.
So I had him. I took his pipe and tobacco out of his shirt and put it in his cargo pockets in his jungle fatigues.
Yeah.
And those are things that, you know, I knew that he was in Vietnam, and I knew what kind of uniform he would wear in Vietnam. But I remembered sticking sunglasses and cigarettes and everything else inside my shirt, and I thought, well, that's a good place to put it. And I just had him stick it in there. It didn't work.
Didn't work.
It didn't work, but and it finally dawned on me to fix it. But if I didn't fix it, somebody who reads that and looks at it and say, well, you know, that's you couldn't do that in jungle fatigues; they'd fall out.
Yeah.
So that's not what he's wearing. Yeah. So your character's got to be, again, he's got to be true to the times, and that's why I got the 1953 serial book catalog.
Right.
You know, I know what kind of hat to put on his girlfriend. I know what she would wear for a coat, how she would dress up.
Yeah. And those are all important to building your character.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's those little details that will kill you with a character.
Right.
And I mean, almost every book and I read a lot. I'm a voracious reader, and I will find something that I question in every book I read.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that maybe I don't know enough about, or I question the writer's thoughts about that, or I thought, oh, I got you. You know, you.
See, I read a lot of like fantasy, so my suspension of disbelief is high.
Yeah, for you, I mean, because you know, as I said, unless you've been on the dark side of the moon, you don't know what it looks like.
Exactly.
You know, so you just make it up as you go.
Yeah.
In my writing class, I used to do a little exercise where I would have my students close their eyes and get on some kind of conveyance. I think it would be a bicycle, a tricycle, a rocket ship, whatever you're comfortable in, and travel to the dark side of the moon. And you spend some time there and then come back to Earth. And then I have them describe what you saw. What did you see on the dark side of the moon? And everybody had something different because everybody sees it differently. And there's no right answer. You know, there's probably 20 people in the world who have seen the dark side of the moon. And none of them were in my class, so whatever my students said was correct because they're making up that world.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think this has been really good, and for creating a character. And next time we'll talk about, what are we going to talk about next?
I think next time we'll probably talk about dialogue.
Dialogue, important.
Yeah, dialogue, and then we're going to do one on action.
All right. Well, Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time for dialogue and or action.
And create a good character.
Create good characters.
Create a character that you love to love or love to hate. One of the two.
Or one of each.
One of each.
All right, thank you.